I think I see Dr. Rosensweet.
Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning, Dr. R. I am hoping you are well.
I am.
Good. Well, I'm frozen, so I just want you to know the hormones are working. No more heat. And I gotta connect my heater. Anyway, questions.
Here we go.
Here we go. Yeah, it's what is it like? Let's get to it. Whatever it is. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get to it. There's one question that I sent to you. I didn't get a response, but I hope you're okay with this one. I love this question. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. It's from another group. And this dear woman says, how is it that young girls do not suffer vaginal atrophy? The burning, the itching, so on and so forth. Their E levels are super low before puberty. So why does this only happen to women after menopause?
It's a good question, and the answer is pretty clear. It's not so much the day-to-day variations in estrogen levels that matter, or hormone levels in general. It's what is the general body level of hormones. In a young woman, the level of the ovarian hormones are robust. They're rich. Yes, they vary throughout the month, okay, but in general, the levels are rich. So they don't get vaginal atrophy. However, in a menopausal woman, those levels drop way low in general, day after day after day. They do get vaginal atrophy. The health of the vagina is very dependent on estrogen levels as well as other hormone levels.
Right. So, I mean, even like a young girl, I guess, like she just naturally has an abundance of estrogen, so she doesn't have to worry about it. She's not even thinking about estrogen, really, right?
Correct.
So it's like that. Okay, great. I love that question. Like, you're not seeing a lot of young girls walking around going, "Oh my God, this really sucks." They're happy. Okie dokie. So, here's my question for you. Number one, you're taking hormones. Everything is going fine. You've been taking them for months and months, and then bam, out of nowhere, 9 months, 10 months in, hot flash, middle of the night. You're like, how the heck? How does this happen? And it happens a few nights in a row. How is this? Do hormones still fluctuate when given to us? Help. Is it okay to take estrogen and progesterone in the middle of the night, as an emergency dose? Because this is miserable.
I'm always amazed by the quality of the questions.
Well, I make them all up myself. That's why. No, I'm just kidding. I wish I could take
the part of it is a lot of the treatment recommendations that women receive and a lot of the treatment programs that they're on, they're good. They're getting some value. But if symptoms start developing in the middle of a treatment program, even though she was good for 9 months, here's what it says to me. She wasn't really dialed in properly. The amount of precision and getting it right in the balance, in the hormones that are being used, it just didn't make it all the way.
Right.
And there's a lot of hormone programs that are not making it all the way. In fact, in the majority, unless someone's doing a 24-hour urine hormone test, you don't really know. These other methods are really not okay. As I've said many times, they can give you some information, but they don't give you the level of precision. So my first belief about this woman is that she was getting some decent hormonal benefit. Bravo, fantastic, but it was too marginal. So some stress comes along, or for whatever the many possibilities of getting a hot flash in the middle of the night after 9 months, the situation was not proper. And, interestingly enough, one could say, well, yeah, her estrogen levels just weren't up to the sufficient amount in her body. And so she got a hot flash because she probably had some extra stress, and she was riding a low end of estrogen levels, and she didn't have enough to deal with the extra stress. I'm making up a story, but this is a common story. But here's something else. You can get a hot flash in the middle of the night from too much.
I know.
And so this is where the expertise is needed and where the proper testing is needed. And, you don't have to test immediately. One of the things I love to do in a challenging situation is come up with an idea and then see how it plays out. So, make a recommendation to this woman that she increase her nocturnal bias dose. Hopefully she's on bias twice a day, and see how it plays out. If she gets worse, she probably was an overdose. If it gets better, she didn't have enough. But ultimately, you want to get the level of expertise. We're talking 10, 20, 30, 40 years of treatment here. This is not something to approach in a part way. And the ultimate benefits are so great when you get it right.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Lifelong. And they do need adjusting over time. I mean, in the menopause method, no matter what a woman's good experiences are in the first year when she gets, quote, dialed in, we have an annual, very significant evaluation because dosages and programs need to be tweaked over time. That's why we do an annual as part of the membership. But whatever was going well for you, bravo, that's a good thing. But it doesn't mean that she was dialed in to what was optimal for her body. And sometimes stressful situation comes along and the dosages that were serving you so well, they don't serve you, and you need to make adjustments on the fly. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to get the women familiar enough with what symptoms of insufficiency and excess look like. And just to remind everybody that these ovarian hormones, we tend to think of them as female hormones, and we tend to think of testicular hormones as male hormones. But these hormones are so powerful, they have multiple universal effects in a woman's body. And they are very much recruitable for the fight or flight response, because estrogen and testosterone and DHEA, these are animating. And so these are captured if the stress response is going on. If your body registers stress, it'll send the estrogen and the testosterone down the stress pathway, because as far as your being goes and your body goes, fight or flight, this is life-threatening. This is saber-toothed tiger territory. Female functions, they're great, but they're optional. They're not as a lot of moving parts going on in anyone's program. These are not wonderfully, perfectly stable, same dose every day is always going to work for everybody, never exception. No. Again, download her book. I always felt like the more a woman knows, she'll be able to make adjustments. And when in doubt, refer to her specialist, someone who really knows what they're doing when something comes up.
Thank you for that answer. I lived with a few saber-toothed tigers in my day, in my living room. I didn't enjoy that too much. And bringing up the stress response is very interesting to me. Hormones, I don't know that maybe any of us really pay attention to how incredibly powerful they are. And when you're in fight or flight, I mean, how can you really enjoy life, when you're trying to save your own life? There's not a lot of enjoyment when you're running away from that saber-toothed tiger, because you're running like crazy. So our Facebook user, our mystery lady, is asking a question. I just want to bring it in really quickly because she said she started the menopause method, gained 10 pounds in less than 60 days. Quite concerning. And the only thing different in that time period was adding the testosterone. I had previously been on estrogen and progesterone. Is this okay to ask? Is going off testosterone an okay thing?
Thank you for asking that. And it takes us into the world and universe and galaxy and solar system of the subject of weight gain. So,
Yeah.
so because this is such a common thing, I'd like to pause on this one and go into that territory.
Okay.
And first, I want to do so by telling you a very common medical story that so many doctors have heard many times over their career, and I certainly heard it.
Okay.
Doctor, I don't understand it. My family went bankrupt. It was, the stress was so enormous, and oh my God, then I went through a divorce, and I was just really chugging along there, being able to manage it as hard as it was. And then my mother got ill, and eventually she was in the hospital for 5 years. And I just muscled up and shouldered the whole thing. And then finally, things started to calm down, and I was breathing such a sigh of relief. I was so grateful to not be on the front lines of a war zone for the first time in years. And the next thing that happened is I got pneumonia.
Right.
Why would I get pneumonia then? Doesn't make sense. I should have gotten pneumonia 5 times during what was the most stressful period of my life. Well, I know it's a little bit of a stretch of a metaphor there, or an analogy, but it's very similar. Weight gain has got a lot of moving parts, and they don't necessarily happen all of a sudden abruptly. But it's very common for a woman going into menopause to simultaneously be gaining weight. And then the question is there an immediate answer? Was it something that occurred overnight or due to one factor? And
Right.
weight gain, as much as anything, is not due to one factor. And, usually we are able to trace the antecedents, the original causes, way back. Like, one of my favorite things to do over the years is to look at simple blood tests. And I'll notice, as I follow patients year upon year, I'll see, look at this. Their fasting glucose when I first met them was 72. And gradually, over the years, it's creeped up to 86. Well, that's totally within the normal range, which is, depending on the lab, 65 to 99. But I smell something's going on there with that rise in fasting glucose over the years. They're developing insulin resistance, and they're not able to manage and keep their glucose as low as they did when they were teenagers or when they were in their 20s. And if they're developing insulin resistance, they're sooner or later, their metabolism is going to be affected, and they're going to start gaining weight. We care so much about weight, and Carolyn so generously put up you can download the PDF of my book, Happy, Healthy Hormones. We have a whole chapter at the end of that book called Weight Gain, and we discuss these very many moving parts. And also, hormones in general play a major relationship to metabolism.
Yes.
Metabolism is what you do with your food, and whether you're going to store your food in inconvenient places in your body, or you're going to burn your food and use it for energy and function.
I mean, is that kind of like the hibernating bear thing? Like how bears, store their food so they can use it as energy later?
Well, it's more immediate. Yes, it is, but it's more immediate. Your body is making millions of decisions every moment from the meal you just ate. Am I going to store that meal as fat tissue? Am I going to be able to distribute that meal and burn it inside the cells and create energy and heat and life and vitality? These decisions are made, not consciously, every second, every microsecond. And here's what happens. Whether you're going to store food or burn it is going to depend on your diet. What are you doing to yourself? And what have your dietary indiscretions look like over the past 10, 20, 30 years? Because those dietary indiscretions set up pathways that one of the results can be weight gain. So we ask for a diet diary, and when we're really doing a functional medicine profile of somebody, we want them to record what they've been eating for the last 3 typical days, and we want typical. And having done this for 50 years, questioning patients about this, and patients don't necessarily, none of us don't, we don't know. The diet over the last 50 years is really had an impact. And I don't often run into someone who's been careful for the last 50 years or 20 years or 10 years, and people are tuning up, but there's varying degrees of tune up. So thus far I've named 2 things that really matter. One of them is, how's your relationship to insulin and fasting glucose going for you, which is majorly affected by diet. That was number 2, and stress. Whoo-hoo! The fight or flight biochemistry led by cortisol and adrenaline. They're right out there in the vanguard. They can empower a mother to lift a car off of a child. Well, where did that power come from? And what went on metabolically that they're able to do that? Well, they shift the energy out of the immune system and anywhere else they can get it and put it all into the muscles for fight or flight. And they do that through very elevated levels of adrenaline and cortisol. And they provide immediate fuel for the brain through mobilizing glucose. That happens to be a recipe ultimately for insulin resistance. You keep triggering that fight or flight, and you are developing insulin resistance. It's the perfect storm. And I keep mentioning insulin resistance because the upshot of insulin resistance is weight gain.
Right.
So I started by telling you that story about the pneumonia that came on after everything. And the purpose of that story was to let you know what you've done over the last 10 to 20 years really add up. And when do they add up? When there's this brand new stress called the loss of the ovarian hormones, called menopause. I lost my ovarian hormones. In the old days, prior to this change of life, when you had fight or flight, you recruited not only adrenaline and cortisol, you recruited every mobilizing hormone that's available to you. These things are so powerful. And so you also recruited estrogen and testosterone and DHEA. Yeah, well, that's great. But all of a sudden, when you're into fight or flight at menopause, you can't recruit the estrogen and the testosterone because it's not there. It's gone. The ovaries aren't doing anymore. So you have to rely even heavier on cortisol and adrenaline, and your tendency and your propensity to develop insulin resistance rises at menopause. Oh, what's the corollary to this? Restore those hormones. Restore that estrogen and testosterone. Otherwise, you're going to get into some metabolic challenges called insulin resistance and weight gain. Oh, there's more.
So
throughout the course of our life, we're not just straining the ovaries, or in men, the testicles, and we're not just straining them, we're straining the adrenal glands, and we're stressing the thyroid gland as well, because these are the most powerful biochemicals you got going on, floating out in your body, and they all animate metabolism. And the more metabolism, the more you burn the food you eat for energy and vitality. The less the metabolism, the more likely you are to gain weight. And so thyroid is where I'm heading. Yes, we're very used at menopause. Most people are very clear that all of a sudden the bottom falls out on estrogen and testosterone, progesterone, and DHEA. Yeah, the ovaries stop doing it, stop producing them. But what's been going on in the background is a strained thyroid and strained adrenals over the years. And interestingly enough, your body is going to prioritize the adrenal cortex, i.e. cortisol. It's the most important hormone in your body. You can't live without it. So that one's going to be preserved. It's going to be the last one to go. But the thyroid pays the price too. And so you have so many adults in midlife that they're not cranking the level of thyroid production that they did when they were 20. No way. So
Right.
hypothyroidism, and especially functional hypothyroidism, I'm not talking about frank or laboratory easy to identify hypothyroidism. I'm talking about that thyroid gland's gotten tired too, and it's not doing what it used to do, and you're not burning it like you used to. You're not burning your food like you used to. And your body, if your body temperature is more sensitive to cold, your thyroid's down. In fact, one of the tests for hypothyroidism, a functional hypothyroidism, was you have patients take their basal temperature in the morning when they wake up, stick a thermometer under your armpit, and stay in bed. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't animate any metabolism. Just wake up, stick that thermometer that's been shaken down, if it's the old-fashioned kind, or if it's digital, stick it right under the armpit when you wake up. If that's less than 97.4, you're not producing the amount of heat that you used to.
Right.
If you're in Florida and you got your air conditioner above 98, you're hypothyroid. You're not producing enough body heat, so you hate to get that air conditioning too cold. If you got a cold sensitivity that you didn't have, you're functionally hypothyroid. Why am I mentioning this? Because back in the day, in the old-fashioned times of horse and buggy, when I grew up in medicine, the country docs realized people were hypothyroid, and they gave them thyroid right and left because they needed it, and they benefited by it, and people felt better. So I'm mentioning, what have I been doing? God, Carolyn, have I been answering this question for an hour and a half now, and I've totally taken up our time? No, it was a profound question. And
it's a really important question.
It brought us into the world of weight. And so what I'm suggesting is our Facebook user is saying, did testosterone do this? And what I did is I totally went in a different direction. Mm-hmm. I wanted to give you the background, and I'd say it's very, very, as in very, and did I say very unlikely that it's the testosterone?
Spelled V-E-R-Y, very?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly how you spell it. So I'm going to say that we want to look to the many elephanti in the room.
Elephanti, I love that.
That's the plural in my lexicon of elephants. And it's possible that your testosterone is a little off, but in menopause, it's the greatest chances are that you need testosterone, and maybe the dose is a little off. But I certainly didn't start by saying, oh yes, let's go look at the testosterone, and we could.
No,
we could test
the thing I think here is that our Facebook user started the menopause method. So in her being a part of the menopause method, in my mind anyway, having been a part of the menopause method, there's definitely help and hope, because these doctors know this. And you gave a really good explanation that
I'm not even done. Can you believe it?
Huh?
I'm not even done.
Oh, no, I don't believe that.
That menopause is a precipitous event in that the period stops.
Yeah.
But health-wise and metabolically, and as it relates to weight, it's the culmination of 10, 20, 30 years of changes.
Yes.
And they show up royally. They seem to just crash onto the scene in menopause, but they've been developing over 10, 20, 30 years. And so we always consult. We're in this for the long haul, because my suggestion to myself is take my lovely hormones every day of my life as long as I'm on Earth. And my suggestion to women is let's plan for the long range here. And we're not going to, you've got a slow moving train that's been gradually declining since you were 20. We're not going to turn the tide on this completely and thoroughly in a month. we're going to do it over the course of, and your body has to adjust and readjust and readjust. Your body has been adjusting to the declining levels for decades. So I am suggesting that it's very unlikely that it was the adding of the testosterone, although you may have some tweaking to do around testosterone. And hopefully I know for sure. In fact, I'm connected to your menopause method treater.
How about that?
Most likely, they're consulting with me on your case, especially if you're a member. But no, we want to look at all the moving parts. And where I recommend that you start with Facebook User, if you haven't gotten the book already, you should have. If you're in the method, you should have gotten a hard copy, actually. We actually, Jen actually sends out a hard copy as part of welcome. Go to that chapter on weight. And yes, because you asked the question around testosterone, whenever a patient asks me a question about something, I pay attention, because it's liable to be they're channeling something that does matter to them. So I'm sorry to take all of this. I'm not sorry. I'm very rarely sorry. In my life, I'm sorry about things, but in medicine, I'm not sorry about very. So pretty lame. But what I'd like to say is, the reason I'm interested in paying attention to testosterone for you, Facebook user, is the question came to your mind.
Yes.
I'm always so curious what a patient starts off a consultation with me with. Hey, I'm a little concerned about testosterone. I'm not going to say, oh, forget about that.
Yeah, right.
Time. Let's go to what I see as the most important. No, 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 no. I'm the opposite. If anyone's ever been on a consult with me, I'm paying super attention to the first 3 sentences out of your mouth, because so often patients will be saying something that does matter to them. They may not even know why, and it may just be intuition. But if the question is there, we want to answer that question. So I took all of this time to get to say, we do want to inspect your testosterone, and we can do so by asking you questions about the symptoms, and we can get a hint of overdose. Yet I wanted to walk you into the much bigger topic, because stabilizing weight and even getting into return to a more acceptable weight, I love this project, and it's a piece of work. There's a lot of moving parts to attend to and do, and it matters, and we go on that journey with you. So thank you, Carolyn, and Facebook.
No, I gotta love the Facebook user. She's our mystery lady.
Yes.
Except, you know what? I think I know who she is.
Oh, you do, eh?
I've done my homework. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even really need to ask this next. You just answered it. It had to do with testosterone. Very quickly. I can't even say that.
You know that I don't. You're using an English word that I don't understand.
Yeah, I know.
You're using that word quackly or quickly or quikely, or what is that word? I don't understand that word.
It doesn't exist. I made it up because you certainly don't understand it, and I don't understand it, as you well know.
So let's get our language cleared up here, because you're using terms that I do not understand in the least.
Kindly forgive. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so we've got time here. So I want to get to, because I lose them. How old is too old for treatment? Now, that's like the best question in the world, I think, for you.
It is.
Asked it a lot.
Let me answer it direct by saying I started treating my mother-in-law when she was 86 and my mother when I was 88, when she was 88, to their advantage.
Yes.
In fact, because things are different for the elderly, we try and simplify their program so much that we have in the menopause method something we call MME. It's menopause method hormones for the elderly. And just to simplify it, we put it all in one bottle. We put 6 hormones all in one bottle. We don't do that with younger folks, but we do acknowledge that for the elderly, and I'm not saying this patient is elderly. I haven't even answered her question yet, Diane, I know. But I did want to say that, why do we say this? Because an 86-year-old, her life matters as much to her as a 20-year-old's life matters to her. And for my mother-in-law, for example, she developed osteoporosis. We didn't really know about it. She had lost her muscles, sarcopenia. She moved from a cane to a walker, and she was standing in her kitchen, and she turned to the right and fell because she was unstable on her feet, even with her walker there. She fractured her pelvis, her humerus, and was in rehab for 3 months. And after treating her for 3 months, after rehab with hormones, we have a video somewhere in our system. It used to be on the homepage in Menopause Method, of she's sitting on a low couch. She's got a big smile on her face. She's got her arms outstretched like this, and she lifts herself off that couch to a standing position without using her hands. She needed a walker prior to that. And that shows you what can be accomplished even in the elderly. And my mother also was able to surrender her cane. Now, do I prefer to treat women earlier in their lives? Yes, I do. But my statement is, anytime you think about it, it's your time. So there is no such thing as too old for treatment in men or women or men. And when it comes to you, let's do it. Let's go on the journey. And I wanted to give you those dramatic examples because it can make a difference at whatever age. And as I said earlier in this program, and I said many times, we want to get on these hormones and stay on them for as long as we're on Earth and never drop a beat. They're so powerful and they're so beneficial. They can make as much a difference as any given molecule that you could name on this planet, including all nutritional supplements, etc. Now, there are some caveats in treating older women. And it's not a clear story, but a Menopause Method provider is really tuned into this. Young women have much less incidence of coronary artery disease, heart attack, and death than young men.
Right.
Any doctor, somewhere along their career, is going to hear about this young man who was in his early 40s, and my God, he was never sick a day in his life, and he died of a heart attack on the tennis court. You do not hear those stories about young women because their coronary arteries, as is all their arteries, are protected by estrogen. Oh, how amazing is that? And so young women have much less of an incidence of coronary artery disease than young men. But as both grow older, by the age of 60, that incidence is equal, and 50% of women who die of complications of arteriosclerosis. They have lost their protection of estrogen if they're not replenishing their hormones. Caveat, so what is that? What's the medicine for that? Replenish your hormones as young as you can think of doing it. When a woman has been 10 years into menopause with no hormonal treatment at all, we take special precautions to address and assess the health of her arteries. Because there are rare instances that if hormone or treatments are instituted too intensely and too abruptly, if she has a thrombus, a clot in her coronary arteries, it could break loose. Now, this is a topic of much debate. It doesn't, especially around whether topical estrogens do this. We know that there's a problem with oral estrogens.
Right.
But here's the bottom line. It's the same thing that I say every single week. Your job as a woman in menopause is to find an expert in menopause, someone who's specializing in menopause, not someone who's got a broad-based practice, and treating menopause is a small part of that because they know all these things. And certainly anyone in the Menopause Method, any of our healthcare providers, they know all this. We train them in it. So if we see that you're 10 years out or even 7 years out, or you have family history of arteriosclerosis, or you got some lab tests that make us a little concerned about the health of your coronary arteries, we take steps to evaluate your coronary arteries. And there's excellent tests that cardiologists know how to do. And one of them is called a stress echo, in which you get on a conveyor belt, or otherwise known as a treadmill, and you really work up your heart rate while someone's doing an ultrasound on you. Or this can be done through a medication where you put an extra load on the heart. But meanwhile, we want to address those coronary arteries, and that's the main thing. Otherwise, and even then, there's ways to work around it. We want to learn what's so, and then if there's no problem with the coronary arteries and there's no clot in a coronary artery, then we just proceed like I did with my mother-in-law at the time, 86 years old. My mother never had a hormone treatment because she didn't want her son, specialist in menopause or not, to be being her doctor. She was very, shall we say, old school about that, very traditional about that. Nope, my son is not going to be my doctor. I'm not going to discuss my health issues with my son. Very private in that way. So I didn't have a shot at helping her until in her late 80s. So at any rate, it's never too old, and we just do the approach carefully and properly, and we figure out what's going on, and we figure out how to do it.
It's such an important subject, and we could go on and on and on, because I know a lot of women are scared, when they're 60 and they go to their doctors and the doctor says, no, you're 60 and no, sorry.
Well, that's the old school treatment. That's the old school approach. I mean, menopause, unlike any subject in medicine, I've been a doctor for 50 plus years. I've never seen anything happen in any branch of menopause like what happened to women in menopause. I mean, women were being treated with hormones for thousands of years. And since the 1950s, up until the year 2002, there was 18 million American women on hormones, the majority of which was Premarin and Prempro. They were the most popular and profitable drugs of all times. And this was going on in the United States. 18 million women, 40% of the women in menopause were on HRT.
And they were okay.
They were doing great. They were doing much better than their compatriots. And you could see it in them. And of course, they would tell you about it. And there's many patients I've had who want to switch from Premarin and Prempro to bioidenticals. And I would always say this to them: you're so lucky that your doctor put you on Premarin and Prempro. You are so far ahead of what's going on out there. Even though I've never prescribed Premarin or Prempro, I always wanted to acknowledge how fortunate they were at a young age in menopause to go on it. But in 2002, this explosion takes place of wrong information. It was totally false. Even in the original Women's Health Initiative study, it said the risk was statistically insignificant. In science, that means it was junk. But it was small, and it was read by the press and doctors as women are at risk for breast cancer. And it just threw a body blow into the whole, instead of a specialty developing in menopause as it was for neurology and pediatric neurology and any subject, cardiology, these specialties were developing. Doctors were really homing in and trying to get expert on everything. It happened in every part of the world of medicine except menopause, because everyone got terrified of menopause and hormones. 15 years later, the same study committee that did the Women's Health Initiative reported in the same journal that they originally reported that they retracted their statement. After 18 years of follow-up, there is no increased risk in breast cancer, heart attack, and stroke. And your friend, Dr. Blooming, that you were a childhood, you met him when your child, wrote a book called Estrogen Matters. It's over there. It's a pure science. And what I want to tell you about that is, though we're all at risk for illnesses and diagnoses, all of us, we're all at risk for cancer. As a man, I'm at special risk for prostate cancer, and there's reasons for that. As women, there's special risks for breast cancer, and there's reason for that. But even with those risks for illness and cancer, women who are treated with hormones are at less risk for breast cancer, heart attack, and stroke than women who do not have treatment. But that has not made it out there. And so most of the physicians that I ever hear from, they're still poisoned by that misinformation because we haven't got it out there. Now, there are forces to try and re-educate the physician and the public, and they're moving slow. For some reason, the press just went, for obvious reasons, the press went misogynistically wild with there's something wrong with women getting treated, but they didn't pick up the bandwagon when they learned that the whole thing was wrong, and they didn't retract it. So there we go. And once again, it's an example of a quick response from Dr. Rosensweet.
Quick? That's like some that weird language to me. I don't know that word.
Oh, you're not agreeing with me. You don't think that was a quick response?
It was a quick response, actually, as you well know. So, getting into the world shut my mouth. Xenoestrogens, that wonderful word, xenoestrogens.
Wonderful. There's another term that you're using. That's like an oxymoron. The wonderful xenoestrogens. I know you're
wonderful xenoestrogens. It is an oxymoron, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
I know you're just kidding around. I know that.
I know. Those horrible things, xenoestrogens, that don't show up on tests, those little mimickers that make their way into the cell as estrogen.
Yeah, well, let me explain that one. What was the rest of the question?
Well, it says, can you explain what they are and how they make their way into our receptors? They don't show up on tests, and many of us have no idea, but they can wreak havoc. So how do we deal with this?
Well, this is yet another amazing question.
I know, we get some good ones.
We're talking about a big deal.
I know.
And so many millions of Americans and people all over the world, in the course of my medical lifetime, in the course of my lifetime, have gotten more and more interested in health. And they start learning about it. And an example of one of the first things they start learning about is exercise and the importance of it. And another thing they start learning about is what they're eating.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably, people who really care about our health, they get more and more knowledgeable, and even more important than that, they implement the changes they need to bring their exercise and their nutrition up to a really excellent level. And sometimes it takes place in decades, but they do it. Well, there's another subject they get exposed to that is really a 20th and 21st century subject, and it did not exist before the 20th and 21st section. All the history of human beings on Earth, this was a zero, or pretty close to zero. Not in after World War II. And even before World War II, there were problems. But after World War II, we started getting toxicities in our environment, in our food supply.
Yes.
In our air, in our water that never existed. When I was 10 years old, we used to go canoeing on this lake, and we used to go on overnights. And how we got our waters, we stuck our canteen into the lake, and filled it up with this pure, amazing water.
Who does that now?
So what's happened, and I'll give you a little background on it. These chemicals that were once inside of the earth, underground, started being brought up. And the big one was petroleum. And petroleum, gasoline, oil, is extremely toxic to human beings. And then there's these petroleum derivatives. Like after World War II, there was all these tremendous inventory of nitrates that were used in explosives. And then the war was over, and they had these tremendous inventory, and someone had the bright idea, why don't we dump the nitrates on the soil? Because they'll make the plants grow faster, the birth of agribusiness. Well, the plants did grow faster, but they were much unhealthier. They're much more unhealthy. And being unhealthy, they started getting subject to weeds and insects that ordinarily couldn't really damage a high percentage of a healthy crop. The farming methods got really weird, and you have this influx of weeds and bugs. So what was the response? Let's poison them. So they took the petrochemicals and they refined them, and they created these weed killers and insect killers. Now think about a cockroach walking around on your floor as they did in Florida. Or think about all kinds of vermin that can walk around. What does it take to kill them chemically? Do you get to pour some fairy dust on them and they're just going to implode? They're just going to undergo the insect version of apoptosis? No. You have to put some mighty strong chemicals on them to get them to die. And these are going on the soils and making it into the food supply and making it into the water and into the air. And I'm just giving you some examples. And if you go through your pantry and your closets and you look at all these household cleaning supplies and dry cleaner stuff, our environments are so poisoned, it's unreal. And every naturopathic doctor or every functional medicine health coach or physician or anywhere along the line knows that one of the things you have to do is you have to get people to get rid of this toxic chemicals, because these toxic chemicals are toxic. They poison us. And it's not like drinking a glass of arsenic where you get the poisoning and you croak. No, these happen molecule by molecule and they're undetected. And yet human beings are loaded with toxins. And now comes one of the rubs. How do these toxins behave in a human body? Well, for one thing, they're fat soluble, so they go to the fat cells of the body and they store up in there. And human fat cells are loaded with poisons. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to tell you that there's a problem. And when someone needs to heal, they need to take care of their exercise, their nutrition, and their toxicity. And I've left out stress yet. But that's how you do it. You detoxify, you improve your nutrition, you improve your exercise, and you take care of the emotions and your stress, and that's how you heal. It all comes down to that, which should be good news. It just takes some rigor to do it. But you gotta clean out your house. Here's the cleaning supplies I used on my own bathroom this morning to welcome a guest who's coming to stay with me. Vinegar and water. That's what I use, distilled vinegar. And I clean my sinks and I clean my toilets on my knees this morning myself, doing this with vinegar and water. What other household cleaners do you need? Do you need all those chemicals? No, you don't. And so we're not frozen, are we, Carolyn? No, we're not.
No, we're not. I'm amazed because my neighbor begged me to find her some Lysol due to COVID, And
well, there is a place for that. This COVID is a whole different deal.
No, of course.
In general, I would like to say that we've got to detoxify. We got to get rid of all this stuff.
Well, the Lysol scared me because I didn't.
Let me tell you something about these things, how they behave in the human body.
Yeah.
Of all the things in the world that these petrochemicals, because they're all coming from, so many of them are coming from gasoline and oil and stuff like that. They're just
for topsoil erosion.
But it's from these are the chemicals these are the basic ingredients people use to make herbicides and pesticides. And of all the ways that these things could behave in our body, they stimulate estrogen receptor sites. Holy crap, they latch into and bind with hormone receptor sites. And that's why they're called xenoestrogens. They're fake estrogens. And that's what they do. And this is not small potatoes.
No.
One of the things they discovered in Florida was the alligators their reproduction rate went way, way down. And they tested the alligators and they found their sperm counts went way, way down. And when I was in medical school, the normal reference range for male sperm counts were 5 times the amount that they are today. Now the reference range is much lower because these xenoestrogens have gone into the male bodies and screwed us up and reduced our sperm counts among doing other things. And they've screwed up women. And these things are bound to the receptor sites. So any good functional medicine, health coach, naturopath, chiropractors who are interested in this, functional medicine doctors, they all are doing the same thing. They're detoxifying people. So I'm talking to a friend of mine on Zoom this morning, and she's in her portable sauna that you can get for about $350 online. And she does it every day, and she's a naturopath. So why is she doing that? Because she knows this drill. And if we're dealing with xenoestrogens, we just learn how to detoxify them, because we can detoxify, and there's ways to do it. And I'm not going to go into it in this venue right now, but that's what a xenoestrogen is. It's some poison that's snuck into our food supply, or we breathed it, or we drank water that had it.
Or we cleaned our toilets with it, or our sinks.
That's right. We breathed it in, and we got through our skin. And so, moral of the story, clean out all this stuff. It'd get much cheaper for you to clean your house. Vinegar and water, baking soda. This is what I use. And some super clean, free and clear laundry detergent. And super clean dishwashing soap, free and clear. There's companies that have been producing this and care about this for decades, and they keep getting better at it. You don't need any of this garbage. In fact, it's hurting us. So we got to learn how to clean up our environment and get the toxicity out of it. And as a result, we got to get these xenoestrogens out of us. And some women have to detoxify. They have to get quite aggressive about it, which will be good for you anyway. Want to live longer, get these xenoestrogens and the rest of these petrochemical poisons out of our body.
You know, yeah, Facebook user, she's all over today. It's fabulous. And, you know, we can indeed devote an entire show to xenoestrogens, and really, because the land of functional medicine is so fascinating. Chiropractors, NDs, health coaches. I'm in school for functional medicine now. Who would have ever thought? I know.
You are.
My father would have been like, "You're cuckoo."
In that regard, and because I definitely have a hard stop at 11 again, so we've got 4 minutes.
Okay.
It's a hard stop. I'll have to sign us off. Last week we did an interview, and hopefully it's up on Ins and Outs of Menopause with Dr. Lindsay Berkson.
It is.
She is a watch that one. She's a world expert on xenoestrogens.
Oh, good. Yes. Okay.
And
well,
she's a world expert on detoxification, and she's got a website, and she's written about this, and so you can get a guidebook on how to detoxify, including what nutritional supplements to take. Dr. Lindsay, Lindsay Berkson, Berkson. We're so fortunate to have her in our world.
Yeah, and you have a really good backstory with her too that's fascinating. So I make mention of her often, and yes, and we do on many of the forums actually, and she's getting really well known around, and that's an excellent interview that you did with her. So thank you for that.
It's a resource. So if you go to her website, you can download or purchase. You want to learn about xenoestrogens, go to the top of the mountain and she'll tell you about them. And she's written about it. So, and she started talking about it about 30 years ago. This is not a brand new topic.
But if you see her, she doesn't even look 30.
Because she's on bioidentical hormones for her whole adult life.
Exactly.
It's a big deal.
Totally fabulous.
So, Carolyn, I'm going to have to
sign off.
Our final hellos and goodbyes for today, and we're back next Tuesday.
We are. Everybody, thank you, ladies, for coming up. I got to all the. We managed to get through all the questions. I can't believe it. You, doctor, dear doctor, have a fabulous weekend. Enjoy your guest. Everything will be nice and clean for your guest. And I guess I've got to get to work and start cleaning up my own place. I don't even have a guest, but I got to clean it up. Have a really good one. See you later, ladies. Enjoy. God bless. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye, Carolyn.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.